A reading from the prophet Ezekiel. The Spirit came into me and made me stand up, and I heard the Lord speaking to me. He said, Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to the rebels who have turned against me. Till now, they and their ancestors have been in revolt against me. The sons are defiant and obstinate. I am sending you to them to say, the Lord says this, whether they listen or not, this set of rebels shall know there is a prophet amongst them. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Our eyes are on the Lord, till he shows us his mercy.
Our eyes are on the Lord, till he shows us his mercy.
To you have I lifted up my eyes, you who dwell in the heavens. My eyes, like the eyes of slaves, on the hands of the Lord. The Lord. Like the eyes of a servant on the hand of his mistress, so our eyes on the Lord our God, till he shows us his mercy. Have mercy on us, Lord, have mercy. We are filled with contempt. Indeed, all too full is our soul, with the scorn of the rich, with the proud man disdain. A reading from the second letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. In view of the extraordinary nature of these revelations, to stop me from getting too proud, I was given a throne in the flesh, an angel of Satan, to beat me and stop me from getting too proud. About this thing, I've pleaded with the Lord 3 times for it to leave me, but he has said, my grace is enough for you. My power is at its best in weakness. So I shall be very happy to make my weaknesses my special boast, so that the power of Christ may stay over me. And that is why I'm quite content with my weaknesses, and with insults, hardships, persecutions, and the agonies I go through for Christ's sake. For it is when I'm weak that I am strong. The word of the Lord.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus went to his hometown, and his disciples accompanied him. With the coming of the Sabbath, he began teaching in the synagogue. And most of them were astonished when they heard him. They said, where did the man get all this? What is this wisdom that has been granted him, and all these miracles that are worked through him? This is the carpenter, surely the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Jude and Simon. His sisters too, are they not here with us? And they will not accept him. And Jesus said to them, a prophet is only dispersed in his own country, among his own relations and his own house. And he could work no miracle there, though he cured a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
The word prophet has become one of those words that have been bastardized in its modern usage. To be a prophet in the manner in which the concept is being used and understood today is to have the ability to predict the future, to be a soothsayer kind of, to have, quote unquote, the power to work miracles and wonders, to have thousands of followers and cheerleaders rooting for one, etc., etc. In a word, to be a prophet, as is currently misunderstood, is to be a flamboyant rock star trotting around the globe in a private jet, all in the name of going for crusades. Today's so-called prophets behave and act like kings, seeking recognitions from high and low. However, all these are misconceptions that have little to do with the biblical idea of a prophet. Very little to do with that. A biblical prophet is one who is despised and rejected because he tells the truth and he challenges the status quo. That is a biblical prophet. His motivation is not to become a king, but to challenge kings. Most of them were hated and vilified during their lifetime. They were not popular figures as we erroneously think of them today. Their prophecies were codified long after they had died and gone. It's only when we read such prophecies in hindsight that we think that the prophets were kind of superhuman beings who exuded some aura of invincibility and as such were considered extraordinary during their lifetime. No. In actual fact, they were rather considered as social misfits and disruptors of the social order. All of them. Most of the time, they found themselves in the crossfire between the powers that be and the people they were trying to protect from such powers. On the one hand, while the authorities sought to silence them because they were a thorn in their flesh, on the other hand, the people did not embrace them because not only were they challenging them to amend their ways, the prophets were ordinary people they were familiar with nothing exceptional about them. In short, a biblical prophet is so ordinary and so familiar that, in consequence, he is mostly ignored. Go and read the history of prophecy from the Old Testament into the New Testament, and you find out that all of them during their lifetime were totally ignored. They were inconsequential. Nobody took notice of them. But because we are now reading backward, and eventually when some of their prophecies were fulfilled, that was still recorded, we think that as they were prophesying, their prophecies were being fulfilled. Some of the prophecies took thousands of years to be fulfilled, when they have already died and gone, vilified, died and gone. So, what I was saying is that a biblical prophet is so ordinary and so familiar that in consequence, he is mostly ignored. And the saying that too much familiarity breeds contempt is very true of the biblical prophets. We tend to look down on things that are very common to us. Anything that is common tends to lose its value and appreciation. We think that common things are inferior things. But let's reflect a little bit. The commonest things in life are the most precious. I repeat, the commonest things in life are the most precious. Air, water, and light are the three commonest elements in life. But no one can survive without any of them. Air, water, and light. Very common. But no one can survive without any of them. Again, the commonest person in the world is one's mother. But nobody could have survived without his or her mother. Therefore, despite the common syndrome that we practice, has no basis in reality. At all, no basis in reality. And it was this, despite the common syndrome, that made the Jews not to accept Jesus. Jesus, the prophet, was so common to them. They knew him and his family in and out. They were waiting for an uncommon and a supra-terrestrial Messiah. Instead, they got a common carpenter's son who was only getting them into undesirable problems with the Roman authorities. In the gospel of today, Jesus voiced his frustration at his own people when his commonness among them would not allow his people to accept him. The people's reason for rejecting him was not that he didn't have wisdom or that he didn't work miracles. They acknowledged that he had such abundant wisdom and worked several miracles. Yet, they just couldn't take him serious because they knew him as a carpenter's son, the son of Mary. They knew his brothers and sisters by name. Therefore, this common carpenter's son could not be a prophet as far as they were concerned. But Jesus said to them, and I quote, "A prophet is only despised in his own country, among his own relations, and in his own house." Unquote. Long before the rejection of Jesus by his own people, Yahweh encouraged Ezekiel to go and confront his own people, and he kind of warned him that they might reject him. In the first reading of today, describing the people as rebels, as defiant, as obstinate. These are the words used by Yahweh to describe the people of Israel. Yahweh then encouraged Ezekiel to go and confront them because, and I quote here, "Whether they listen or not, this set of rebels shall know there is a prophet among them." In other words, Ezekiel was forewarned that he was not going to be was not going to be popular among the people. And such unpopularity is actually what makes the biblical prophet. In the second reading, St. Paul did not fare any better. Like all true prophets, he was bemoaning the presence of his more popular rivals who were boasting of their achievements and miracles while criticizing Paul for not being as popular and as well accepted as they were. You know, this passage, this second reading, the passage is extracted from the so-called tearful letter And we're talking about 2 Corinthians chapters 10 to 13. In today's passage, Paul confesses that each time he was tempted to play to the gallery in order to become as popular as his opponents, he becomes agonizingly aware of a thorn in the flesh, which he says was deliberately given to him by God to stop him from getting too proud. We were not told what that thorn in the flesh was, but Paul says that each time he prays for it to be removed, the Lord assured him that, quote, "My grace is enough for you. My power is at its best in weakness," unquote. In other words, Paul lived with such maltreatment and difficulties as a true prophet because, as he said, quote, "It is when I am weak that I am strong." Nowadays, our self-proclaimed prophets have absolutely nothing in common with the biblical prophets, and we know that. They seek to gain popularity by telling the people what the people want to hear, and not necessarily the truth. They mystify themselves and make themselves scarce to avoid being regarded as common, and this in order to increase their chances of becoming popular among the people. Today's so-called prophets are seeking popularity, the very antithesis of what the biblical prophets were. They enjoy the adulations given to them by the people and live like kings. Today, however, the world has too many kings and too many priests and men of God, but very few prophets. We have too many priests, too many kings, too many so-called men of God and women of God, but very few prophets. However, what the world really needs are prophets. To be a prophet is challenging, you know, very, very challenging. A hymn popularized by Liverpool fans is entitled, "You Will Never Walk Alone." We all know that song, especially when the Liverpool are playing in their Anfield Stadium. They keep on singing that. But it's a Christian hymn anyway. They have adopted it as their song. So that hymn is entitled, "You Will Never Walk Alone." As a prophet, however, you will always walk alone. And this is terrifying for many. Very, very terrifying. You will always walk alone as a prophet. But as a prophet, you may walk alone, but you are never alone, because the grace of God is enough for you. You may walk alone, and you will always walk alone, but you are never alone, because the grace of God is enough for you. We must all strive to be prophets. We are all called upon to be prophets. By baptism, we are all supposed to be prophets. And we must all strive to be prophets, not by quoting the Bible recklessly or by gathering followers around us, but by standing up to truth and what is right. We must become prophets by telling the people what they may not like to hear, but what we know is right for them. That's what makes a prophet. Telling the people what they may not like to hear, but what is right for them. But we must be prepared to become unpopular among the people, just like all the biblical prophets were unpopular among their contemporaries. Prophecy has nothing to do with popularity or extraordinariness. Prophecy has everything to do with being prepared to walk alone by being consistent with the truth. The question is, how many of us are prepared to become such a prophet?
Days of cold comes bringing all the restless waves. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light. The blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light and let its radiance be like the world.